Hey everyone, welcome to the 2023 Dialed MTB Trail Bike Shootout. Today we're going to be talking the Ibis Ripmo and the WeAre1 Arrival. These are going to be going head to head against each other with an overall winner between these two within this video. So stay tuned to make sure you know which one of these wins out of this. And then with that, there's going to be a bunch of videos within this 2023 Trail Bike Shootout series. So stay tuned, watch all those, and then at the end of the series, we're gonna have a conclusion video that wraps it all up with an overall winner out of all 6 of these trail bikes. So make sure you watch that. But with that, we're gonna talk about the builds on these bikes. So let's start here with this Ibis Ripmo. This is the V2S, which the S I think is just what they came out with the new rear triangle to accommodate the SRAM UDH or that transmission that just came out. But this is the X01 build. It retails for $72.99. It's X01 everything, X01 cranks, not the X1 cranks, which is actually a pretty big difference. The X1 is more like a GX carbon than it is an X01 carbon. So pretty rad that they put that on there. X01 cable everything. It comes with Fox factory suspension and carbon Ibis bars with an Industry 9 stem. It comes with the Ibis branded aluminum wheels. These wheels are pretty dang heavy, so if you're going to upgrade anything on this bike, I'd say that'd be one thing that I would do that would probably upgrade this whole feeling of this bike up and down the hill, in my opinion. It comes with a bike yoke dropper, and I really like that. The frame is pretty dang solid. So it has the DW link, 147 millimeters of rear travel, 160 millimeters of front travel, and that pretty much wraps up this bike. There's also other builds we're gonna be talking about here in just a minute, but let's talk about this specific build on this WeAre1 Arrival. This is the SP1, which retails for $91.99, so $9,200. I did change a couple things on this one. TRP brakes, I also put TRP brakes on this bike, so they're gonna be the same on the brake package. They both come with code RSCs. The Arrival comes with the HS2 rotors, which I actually do think helps them quite a bit. So if you want to stick with those code RSCs, maybe upgrade those rotors when you get a chance, and that probably will make them a little bit better. But let's get back into this bike. It comes with full RockShox Ultimate suspension, Lyric up front, Super Deluxe in the back, X01 axis, so X01 carbon cranks, X01 axis derailleur and shifter. And then it does come with an X01 chain and cassette, but I did upgrade that to an XX1 chain and cassette just for the color. I think they're all the same weight, so nothing changes there. And then it does come with carbon wheels with Industry 9 Hydra hubs. These are the Convergence WeAre1 rims, which are super rad. I really, really like those. And then it comes with the WeAre1 dub bar package, which is that stem and bar combo. Super compliant feeling. And then it obviously comes with this pretty bougie dropper post, that RockShox Axis reverb. Super expensive, overly expensive, but it does work really good. And then overall, just a really cool looking bike. So with that, let's talk about some other builds outside of these two that are on this test today. Ibis has a $58.99 GX build. It's like a GX and NX mix with G2 brakes, which those brakes would have to go right away because this bike way outdoes G2 brakes in my opinion. That's kind of, I really think they should have just raised their price $100 or $200 and just put codes on them if they had to do like code R's or something. It really needs that. But at $66.99, they have an SLX build, SLX 4-piston brakes, SLX everything else on the bike. Still Fox factory suspension on all their builds, so that's really nice that they just give you the good suspension to start with. No hassling there. Super rad. And then at $72.99, they have this X01 or XT build. The only thing about the XT that I like more are the brakes. Everything else I like more on this X01 build, especially for the same price. And then go all the way up to $10,999 for that XX transmission Axis build, which is just top of the line everything. It's got that brand new transmission on it from SRAM. It has the wireless dropper post that you see on this bike. On there, it has carbon wheels, and then it comes with XTR brakes, which I really like that they did that swap SRAM drivetrain, and Shimano brakes, so you don't have to change a single thing on that bike, which is obviously you shouldn't have to at 11 grand. So it's a little more expensive than this bike. Comes with a little bit nicer stuff, but I don't think it's $2,000 worth of nicer stuff, or $1,800 I guess technically. But the WeAre1 Arrival has an SP2 build, which is $73.99, which is GX axis everything, GX carbon cranks. It comes with a RockShox Select Plus suspension front and rear, which is still really good, still the Lyric and the Super Deluxe. And then it also still comes with carbon wheels. It's just the standard WeAre1 carbon wheel set with Industry 9 101 or 1/1 hubs, whatever you like to say. And then it comes with the two things on that build that I would want to trade out right away. It comes with an SDG dropper. Not the worst, but I really don't get along with it. It's really slow and the actuator's a little off. And then it comes with Code R brakes. I'd either go to the Code RCs if you like SRAM or Shimano or TRP or Magura, anything else, honestly. But yeah, $73.99, carbon wheels, GX axis. I almost think that that's a better value than that $72.99 Ibis Ripmo with the XT or the X01. Take some and lose some from each, but it just seems like you win a little bit more with that $73.99 SP2 build. All right, so let's start with the Ripmo for climbing. It's super smooth, super comfortable, and just has so much traction. It's also like just a very efficient feeling climber. You climb on it and you just feel like you're on a small little trail bike, which is crazy. And then what's really cool is when you stand up and pedal, it probably has the most support out of all the bikes on the test. Next, it's either gonna be that or the Smuggler, but the Smuggler is a 130, 140 bike. So that's pretty dang crazy how much support this bike gives you. So it's pretty dang rad. It also just feels really comfortable with that 77-degree effective seat tube angle in the small and the medium. I think it goes to 76 in a large and extra large. But it just feels really comfortable on the climb. And overall, just a really good climbing bike. For 147, 160, like can't ask for much better. All right, so for climbing on the Arrival, once again, super comfortable, just like that Ripmo, but it has like this supportiveness that one feels really efficient, but this one has just like extra support that it's hard to tell you the difference, but it just does. It still has a lot of traction. I'm not sure if it has as much traction as the Ripmo, but still does have a ton of it. And then it also just rolls fast. When you get your speed up, it just continues to carry that speed a little faster than what I expected, especially like going back to back on the climbs with these two bikes. It just rolls fast up the hill, which is crazy sounding. But one thing with that, the 450 reach on this, so they have three sizes. You got to be a certain height for these bikes, which is kind of a bummer because there's only three sizes. This 450 reach with that 77-degree effective seat tube angle, same seat tube angle as the Ripmo, but 10 millimeters shorter on that reach. And then it's a slacker head tube angle, so it just puts everything more compact. So when you first start climbing on this bike, everything feels small, feels real tight and compact. You do get used to it and it actually becomes pretty comfy, at least in my opinion. But that is one thing to think about on the climb or while you're buying a bike. I would not change the size of this bike just for the climb because I like the way that this bike descends. I wouldn't want a larger bike on the descent, but on the climb it would be nicer if it felt a little bigger, but that's just some little side point that is kind of, it's just right in the middle with the sizing on the climb. Like it could be a little bit longer, but you take it and that's how it's gonna be. You do get used to it though, and it's pretty comfortable. So all of that, super supportive and comfortable climber. Overall, both these bikes probably outclimb most bikes in this 147 to 152 millimeters of rear travel category. They both are pretty dang amazing. So with that, let's get out on the trails, go down 2 trails each on each bike back to back, see how they feel, and then come back here and talk about it some more. All right, here we go. Run 1 down Flow Trail on the WeAre1 Arrival. And this bike has just been so dang fun for me. It is like a poppy and playful and super plush bike, which is just crazy. Like, I expected it to be a good bike, like a great bike. I didn't expect it to be as amazing as it is. But yeah, this bike just is so fun. Makes you want to mess around and jump and all that and just have a good time. It corners super well, jumps really comfortably, and then right here, like, it's a little choppy. It's still really smooth, but from other trail bikes, it really just soaks everything up. Those little chattery bumps, it just makes it feel like you're on a asphalt road, which is pretty nice. And when you get to stuff that's not as smooth and flowy as this, it helps a ton. So pretty dang rad bike. Yeah, this thing is so fun. Such a good bike. Let's get back up to the top and ride that Ripmo down and see how that thing does. All right, here we go. Run one on the Ripmo on Flow Trail. And this bike, it gets up and goes, I think a little bit easier than the Arrival. I think this bike actually is heavier, but when you're riding it, it rides lighter. And when you start pedaling while standing, it just pushes you forward. It is pretty crazy. It's not as, the weird thing is though, like, it feels light, but in the air, to kind of have fun in the air, it's not quite as movable feeling. That might just be to me, but that's kind of how it feels. But it has a very similar like feel through that little like braking bump chatter as the Arrival, just maybe not quite as numbing on the little bit. You still feel it, but it's just maybe not a little bit more than the Arrival's all. But man, these bikes feel super similar actually. I was expecting a little bit difference, a little bit more of a difference on like a trail like this, but let's get up to the top and go down a little bit steeper and rockier trail and see how that goes between these two. All right, here we go. The first run on, well, the run on the Ripmo down Shake and Bake. And whoo, this bike, it that little jump right there, it's way easier to do on the Arrival. It just pops a little more. I think this bike is a little more ground huggy, which can be a very good thing, but also something like that not as good. But yeah, this bike corners well, super smooth, and yeah, it just feels like a really good all-around bike. It's really hard to pick one thing out that this thing doesn't do good. Like, it still jumps well, even though I was saying like it doesn't pop as much. Still jumps really good. Whew. Gets a little rattled right there, but pretty much every bike does. Whew. Yeah, it's a super fun bike. I think it's a really fast bike. It just, when you are on the ground, it just wants to move. And when you pedal, it just really pushes you. It's pretty cool feeling that I would be happy to get used to, and I think most people would enjoy that. Yeah, it just is so easy to get going, and keep your speed up on this bike. Super cool feeling. So let's go check out the Arrival, see how it does. All right, the last run on the Arrival down shake and bake. So let's see how it compares to that Ripmo. Yeah, that first section with the jumps, it just pops so much more, which is kind of crazy, the difference it has in pop. But it feels more ground huggy on rough stuff, but yet when you get on a jump, it just pops up like crazy. So kind of interesting. And these bikes are crazy close in geo, as you'll see in that geo chart. But man, through that little rock section right there, it definitely has more composure than the Ripmo, which is crazy. Like, the Ripmo felt so good. Let's see about this. Yeah, same there, just a little bit less like out of control feeling, I guess. But man, that's interesting, because I did do this trail first with the Ripmo, so you know that. And yeah, it's I didn't think this was going to be any better. This bike, yeah, like in this section it carries a lot of speed, but it feels slower than the Ripmo. But just from like me doing this trail a lot, I kind of feel like it's actually probably faster because of that slowed down feeling you get. And when you feel like you're going slow, a lot of times you're going fast. So let's get back, talk about these bikes some more. It's getting dark, sun is set, and yeah, let's get at it. All right, so with that, let's talk about the Ibis Ripmo first for that descent. So it's a very smooth and comfortable descending bike. And also when you're standing up and pedaling going down, it just like pushes you forward with the intention of speed in mind, which is super rad feeling. Like, it's different than most bikes when you're descending. It's pretty cool. And then the front end of this bike is pretty dang awesome. It's very comfortable and gives you some extra confidence, especially with that Fox 38 on the front. Very plush, but with that, it almost gives you more confidence than you realize that you have in that moment, which can be a good or a bad thing. So with that, the front end just goes through that chunk so smooth. And then the rear end, it almost can't keep up enough with it. And it kind of skips and chatters a little bit. If you're okay with getting loose and letting it just cruise on down, it's gonna be a really, really fast bike. But I do think that the front end is so solid, especially with that 38, and the rear end almost can't keep up with it, which it's crazy. I never had that feeling when I was riding this bike on its own. When I was just out riding it, doing my days on it. And then when I was going back to back with that Arrival, that's when I really noticed that, which was kind of weird. So like in that rocky section, it's just like, it's skipping, kind of little dancing around on that rear end, where the front end just felt like it was just going, which I think can be a really, really fast bike if you can ride it that way. So with that, let's go over and talk about the descending on the Arrival. So this bike is a very balanced bike going down, and has so much traction and stability. And then over jumps, it has way more poppiness than you'd expect out of it. So you're going through some rough stuff, and then they have a little hip, or then you go into like a little jump section or whatever. It's crazy how well this bike just pops and gets over stuff. There was a section on the trail I did talk about in the video that it's like this little rough section, a little tabletop deal, and then you go into like an actual tabletop with rocks all over it. I tried harder to jump the Ripmo than I did this, and I almost cleared the whole thing on this bike and was not even close on the Ripmo. And that's just how this bike just handles, which is pretty dang cool. And then with that, you just have the same confidence from the top of the trail all the way down, which is really a cool feeling to have. With it's just how much traction, and with that, it seems like the front end and the rear end are just in sync with each other, which is a very uncommon characteristic for a bike to have. And that's kind of just what makes this bike kind of a little bit more magical than you'd expect from something else. And it's just got this little, it's something that's weird. Like, it's hard to put a word on it, but it's got something extra, and that's why I use that magical word, just because it doesn't feel like your average bike, and it's pretty dang cool. And on the descent, it is something else. It just gives you the most amount of fun and the most amount of confidence, and it is a crazy combination to have. All right, so now we're gonna talk pros and cons. Let's start with cons first, and let's head over to the Ripmo. Real quick, there's only a couple things. So first off, the dropper post on a size medium, they give you a 160. That is probably above average for most, but a lot of people are going to that 175, and I know that that bike yoke 185 would probably fit almost everyone in a size medium. It should, especially with how short that insertion length is. So I think it'd be cool if it was spec'd with that from the beginning. And then it comes with Coda RC brakes. I'm not the biggest fan of those, but they have another build at the same exact price point, which is that XT, which comes with a lot better brakes. So you can just choose that if you want, if you're really focused on the brakes. And then the only other thing about this, the cons, would be just the rims. This whole wheel set is pretty dang heavy. It kind of just, you can tell that it's a little sluggish, but other than that, not many cons on this bike. Everything else is pretty dang dialed. And then let's talk about cons on the WeAre1 Arrival. I don't have that much. Once again, I talked about the brakes. I don't like Coda RC brakes, once again, same as that bike. And then this seat tube right here is really, really tall. And I usually can run between a 185 to 200 on most medium bikes. But this is a 150 millimeter dropper. It is the Axis reverb, so it does take like extra room right here, but I couldn't put a 170 reverb on, which is crazy. Like, I would expect that I'd be able to, but this sticks up so high, and that is noticeable on steeper descents where you're going and that seat is up higher than normal. Well, normal from other bikes right now, because other bikes you can have longer seat posts and have that seat further out of the way, which is the biggest bummer about this bike to me. And then I would say these bars, I really like them, but they do feel weird at first. They are very, very comfortable once you get used to them, but right away, it's not gonna feel comfortable, I don't think. So those are the only cons for that. And let's talk about pros. Now, going back to the Ripmo, man, this bike has such a great suspension design. That DW link is so dang good. So much support when you're standing and pedaling. It just, like I said, it pushes you forward with the intention of speed, and that is pretty dang cool. Also, one thing I actually do like, these bars, you take these grips off, and they have 25 millimeter extensions on each side that just screw in and out. It's a pro and a con. If you like 800 millimeter bars, it's cool. If you like 750 millimeter bars, it's cool because you can go to 800 to 750 by just a screw. And that's pretty rad. I'm not sure if they have a different extension length. If they did, that'd be pretty rad, but I'd really like to be able to go to 780. But that's a pro and a con, super cool, but also kind of in that middle range of width of bars. And honestly, like the bike, the build itself, pretty dang rad. Fox factory suspension, bike yoke dropper, X01 drivetrain. Can't ask for that much more out of it. So overall, super rad. Ibis, that just shows you that they ride bikes and they build the bikes the way that they want to ride them. So pretty good job to Ibis for that. All right, so now let's talk about the pros for the WeAre1 Arrival. First off, let's start with the suspension. Right now, I think RockShox is ahead of Fox in the suspension department. Even though this is only a Lyric versus a 38, that new Lyric has some special stuff going on with it. I don't know if it's the buttercups, I don't know if it's the bleed valves that they copied from Fox or what. I don't know what it is, but it is really good. And then that Super Deluxe Ultimate rear shock, I think that it's not quite as good as that Float X2, but this rear suspension design, something they figured out. Just, I don't know what it is, but they figured something out with this rear suspension that just works absolutely amazing. So that is a major pro for this bike. And then also, if you just step back and look at this bike, whew, it looks so good. I love the way that this bike looks. So there's that. And then the value, I actually expected the value to not be that great. And then I started comparing it to everything else. And with that $73.99 build, that SP2 with carbon wheels, GX axis, carbon bars, oh man, that's not that bad. That is, I'd probably go, if I was buying these bikes at full price, both of them next to each other with $100 difference between the SP2 and this, I would go with the We Are One Arrival. And with that, we're gonna go into the overall winner of this shootout between these two, head-to-head comparison, and I kind of just led to it. The We Are One Arrival is going to be the winner out of these two bikes. Just overall, it climbs really good. Maybe not as supportive as the Ripmo, but it has just something special about this whole bike. The descent is kind of on a whole new level of descent for that 150 millimeter travel bikes. And I know that this ranges from 130 to 152 on this whole Trail Bike Shootout, but this bike, being the most amount of travel, it should plow through everything very similarly. But these are both, had some birds just fly right by, but that's all right. These both are very similar bikes. The Geo, as you saw before, is very, very close. A degree slacker, that bike. Wheelbase is within 1 millimeter of each other. So I try to compare the most identical bikes together. And that is not saying this bike is not great. Like, these are both amazing bikes. And if you buy either one of them, you're gonna be absolutely stoked about it. So with that, this one narrowly beat this, which I was actually surprised. Going into it, I expected the Arrival to be a little bit better. Like, at least like, if this was a 5-star bike, I expected this to be like a 4-star bike, but it was like a 4.5 to 4.8 star bike, you know, overall, if this was a 5. I'm just saying if it was a perfect 5. So with that, we're gonna wrap up. Follow along for the entire 2023 Dialed MTB Trail Bike Shootout and see all the winners against each other throughout this whole series. I know that's not a normal thing on these YouTube videos for people just to be like, yeah, this bike won, this bike didn't. I know people aren't gonna be happy if they own this bike and they think it's better than that, but I'm sorry, I'm comparing these back to back. This is my opinion, so remember that. It can change from person to person. But with that, like and subscribe for more like this, and get out and ride.